Today we're talking about C4, all things C4, everything you could possibly want to know about C4. But specifically, we're going to talk about how C4 can be used as an offensive tool. I think most people understand C4 and how it's used as a defensive tool, but I have found it to be actually extremely viable and extremely versatile when used as an offensive tool. So most of this video is going to cover that, but up front we will cover what C4 is, how it works, and some of the best and normal use cases for it. C4 may be the strongest defensive gadget in the game. It is at the very least an S tier gadget in my opinion, and you'll find a majority of players that run heavy with this gadget equipped. It has a ton of stall potential for cash outs. It does a ton of damage. Not only that, but you get 2 charges that you can place around the map at any given time. C4 is a placed explosive that does a ton of damage when detonated. You can detonate it from anywhere on the map and you get 2 full charges of C4. You can only hold 1 in your inventory at any given time, so the moment that you place that 1 down, you will start regaining charge and you can place a second one down after that. The most common use for C4 is placing it directly on the cash out. This will apply tons of damage to somebody trying to steal or any other explosive device, including gas canisters, fire barrels, pyro mines, explosive mines, gas mines. Anything that can be detonated, the C4's explosion will detonate. Now that we understand what C4 is and how it's normally used, let's start talking about how it's used as an offensive tool. This is by far my favorite reason to run C4. Don't get me wrong, I love the fact that it can be a defensive tool, but it has so much sneaky potential as an offensive tool that I think it's honestly slept on. The first thing you're going to want to do when learning how to use C4 offensively is get used to how to throw it. Just like any other hand-thrown projectile in this game, it has its own unique thrown arc and can take some time to get used to. It is a bit heavier than the frag grenade or the glitch grenade and doesn't go quite as far, but once you learn how to throw it, you can actually get it to go some pretty incredible distances. Before you get in the game and try and throw these things across the map, I recommend starting out by just learning to throw them a bit in front of you while you're being pushed by enemies. This is a great offensive use opportunity to learn how to use it and to learn how to apply that throwing technique. When you throw the C4 through the air, it is a silent projectile. You can't hear it at all. The enemies won't hear it at all. And the arming time, the time for it to be ready to detonate, happens the second it leaves your hand, meaning that by the time it lands on the ground in front of players or by players and maybe they hear it beep, it will be too late because you'll already be detonating it to apply that damage. Some players will understand to clear the C4 off the cash out beforehand, so I like to save one in reserve just in case that happens. Sometimes you might find yourself a little too far away from the cash out to place one back after it's been cleared, but that is a good opportunity to use your throwing C4 technique. In this way, players rarely see it coming and gives you an easy opportunity to get picks off of the cash out steal. Now that you understand the basics of throwing C4, let's show you how to maximize it totally. The best places to throw C4 offensively are in confined spaces where there's little room for the enemy to wiggle or walk away from it. This allows you to maximize the damage from the C4 as it will do full amounts of damage to anybody in that confined space. Additionally, to maximize your distance on the throw, consider throwing from a height position to somebody lower on the ground. The higher you are, the further you can throw it and the more distance it can travel. Don't forget, sometimes it's not about applying damage, but also getting rid of defenses like bubble shields or getting behind mesh shields. This is where the RPG can fall short and the thrown C4 can really shine. It takes time to perfect the long distance throw, and you will find that it is less accurate the further you throw it in most cases. You can't see where it lands some of the time, and it will not always apply a ton of damage even though you get a hit marker. In these cases, you can still turn the fight in your favor as the random explosion usually scares the enemy enough into making some sort of a mistake. I know when something blows up by me that I don't expect, I panic because I have no idea where it came from. That's usually the benefit I see when even the damage is small. Now that you understand the mechanics and the different situations that throwing C4 offensively can really help, Let's look at ways that you can do this to counter specific setups by players. One of the toughest things for me to deal with is smoke thermal lights. It is the bane of my existence personally, and they are the hardest counter for me and my setups personally. I have found that the C4 is actually an incredible way to counter the smoke thermal lights, not just because it will apply damage or get the elimination on the player hiding in the smoke, but explosives also disperse smoke from the field. Even if you don't get the damage applied, the explosion going off in the smoke will cause the smoke to go away. So you even get the added benefit of clearing the area from smoke, even if you don't get the elim from it. Additionally, any melee user like dual blades, sledgehammer, spear are susceptible to a C4 placed at their feet, just like the smoke thermal light is. This is another good use for the offensive C4. Another way to use C4 to counter enemies in the nearby area is to use it on floors below where enemies are. Nobody ever expects the floor to get blown up from underneath them, and I have found that doing that really gives me an edge in that engagement. This will almost always cause enemies to panic because they're not expecting it, and can give you a real big edge in winning that fight. And then finally, last but certainly not least, is learning to bait people onto C4s that you have placed in areas they're not expecting. I have found when I get into a fight that it's very easy to put a C4 down and the enemy player not realize it's there. The beeping is usually covered up by explosions or gunfires, so they don't recognize that there's danger present when they step over it, and it allows me a really big opportunity to do some immediate damage and most of the time get myself out of danger. Good places to place C4 for baiting players onto them are on res trophies, over goo walls, or even in some areas where the building's kind of falling apart. All of these are areas that players don't normally expect to be C4'd and can give you an advantage in using it as a bait technique. Now that you understand all of the different ways you can be offensive with C4 and find tons of value in playing it more aggressively than defensively, the last thing you're really going to want to understand about C4 is the utility it provides you is pretty phenomenal as well. It's not just a gadget intended to do damage or to get eliminations or to defend cash outs, but it is a gadget that is used to do just about anything you need to within the arena itself. You may find yourself in situations where you have an enemy get really low on health and then they find a wall that they can get behind and hide. This is a good opportunity to use that offensive thrown C4, throw it at the wall they're hiding behind, then use your primary weapon to detonate it to open up that wall and get that elimination. Another good way to utilize C4 is to drop cache boxes that are about to be portaled into a cache out by an enemy team. By detonating the C4 and dropping the cache box down, it will no longer pop open and go through the portal automatically, and it forces the enemy team to either come through and have to figure out where it went, or it gives you a momentary window to grab it for yourself and make a play. As most of us know, movement is such an incredible part of this game, and you might think that C4 doesn't have anything to do with it. But surprisingly, you can use C4 to break open walls and open up floors and give yourself climbable surfaces to get to areas you wouldn't be able to otherwise. It's not the best movement technique, but for everything else that you're getting out of the C4, it helps to know that you can also use it for movement. And then lastly, something to keep in mind is that every time you blow your C4, you're creating a small smoke screen that can help to obscure your view from the enemy. In some cases, this can be enough of an edge to give you time to either retreat or to get into a different position that's more safe. Either way, you don't always have to do damage with your C4 to still get value out of it. And that's it for me, y'all. That's everything I've learned so far in using C4. It is honestly one of the best gadgets in the game, in my opinion, and if you're not using it on heavy, you are sleeping on its value. I hope that this video can help you understand different ways to utilize it outside of just putting it on a cash out to blow it up when somebody gets close to it. It has a ton of value and a ton of utility outside of that normal use case. That's it for me today, y'all. Thanks for watching.